We gaan beginnen.
The second episode of the value stream. Nice to have so many of you joining us again in this session.
And welcome everybody.
And today we'll be talking about product vision. And we actually have a couple of nice tips to share with you around improving your skills of working with and carrying out your product vision. And we'll quickly dive into them. So here's a quick summary, and we'll dive into each of them, also explaining some of the hows. Because it's quite easy to say, well, let's increase our ownership of the vision, but maybe it helps to also have some practical hows. So we'll be sharing for each of these 5 tips, 3 things that we hope you can actually do today. So we hope to make it very practical so that you can actually do something with this. So before diving into those 5 tips, we actually have a question for you, and we would like you to use the Zoom chat window to share your idea. And what we would like to know from you is, if you take a look at these 3 pictures, A, B, and C, then which of these do you think reflects our vision for this podcast best? Because that's the topic, right? We'll be talking about vision, and typically images trump words. So let's see what you think. Which of these would best reflect our vision for this podcast?
Good to see some C's there as well. It's a great letter.
Yeah, a lot of A's and B's. B for the discussion, sharing the same vision.
I thought C stood for Chris.
Ah, that could be. Martin says it's D. Yeah, they are indeed some nice pre-corona stock pictures. All right, awesome. Thank you very much for your ideas. And it's so good to see that you're all correct. Because basically what we hope to do with this this podcast is, I mean, we start early in the morning, right? It's 9 o'clock. We are all starting our days, probably soon running into our dailies with the teams or other calls and meetings. So hopefully this is a nice way to actually get you energized and engaged around your daily job of being a product owner or a product manager. It's nice to engage with the community. And it's good to connect to other product owners, to share ideas, to contribute, at least that's from our perspective, to contribute to the product owner community. And of course, we hope that, that it makes you think a little bit about all the things that we do as product owners. And we hope, of course, that you get something out of it and actually learn something. So those are a couple of important pillars that kind of make up our vision for what this podcast is all about. Now I would like to move into a follow-up question. And since this session is all about tips for improving your skills and work around the product vision, maybe there's an awesome tip that you would like to share with the other product owners. And that way we can actually also contribute a little bit to the connect to and learn from each other. So please share your best tip or a great tip that you find very valuable to share with other product owners. And after that, we'll dive into each of those 5 tips with you.
Yeah, easy, understandable, listening. I love that. Don't be afraid to change.
Yep. Sharing and validating during the sprint review. Tangible and inspiring.
Yeah, share often.
Write it on your Zoom wall. Wow, that's a good one. Put it on the background in
virtual background. I should.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh dear. I have something to do for this afternoon. I'm going to create a Zoom background with my product vision.
Yeah, definitely. Talking points for the team, include them. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you very much for sharing those.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel almost embarrassed because there are many good tips already in the chat. So let us just share what we came up with, and we hope that's helpful. So number one, my first tip, it would be increase the ownership of the vision. And often we see product owners, product managers who are, well, maybe they're handed down the mission by somebody else. And it can happen to everybody. But it doesn't mean you don't own it, right? You can still say, look, maybe somebody else made the mission. I'm now a product owner. I'm the product manager of the product. I'm owning the product vision. And 3 ways how you could actually do that is by sharing it. But sometimes sharing it is difficult. So my tip would be practice this. Practice with your team, practice with some of your stakeholders, practice with your spouse and your family. Product owners team talk a lot about their product vision, and you find that some ways of explaining it work better than others, depending on the context, the situation, the audience that you're in. And yeah, so I've seen many product owners do this and really benefit from it, particularly if you have different types of stakeholders, like very dominant stakeholders or people who are into details. They need a different kind of explanation. Number 2, it doesn't need to be you that comes up with the product vision and you that does everything by yourself. One of the organizations that I work with had a great change manager, product owner in that sense. And what he did is create a wiki page. On the first day that he entered the company, he would create this page and then talk to everybody and try to figure out what is the vision of the product. And then he would create this page and write down, I think that this is the vision of the product, but feel free to change it. And interesting things happened because everybody started changing the vision, but at some point in time, it also sort of cemented in a version that everybody agreed upon. Now, the vision itself was interesting, but what was more interesting were, of course, the change log. So you could see that Chris writes down the product is A, and then Robin changes it to B, and then Chris changes it back to A, and Robin changes it back to B. It means that these 2 people have to talk to each other because apparently something's happening. So that's a great way to actually experiment with it and figure out what the alignment in the organization is, and also the history behind the evolving product vision. And a 3rd way is connecting the product vision to business goals. In most organizations, we have a mission as a company and as a business, and we try to connect products to it. But how do they connect? How does my product contribute to the goals of the company? And if we fail to do so, it often leads to interesting questions from the business and more difficulties when we try to acquire budget. So don't create your vision in isolation, but connect it to whatever the company is doing. That would be my first step. Robin.
Yeah, sorry. In the meantime, we got some questions in around the chat window, so I was trying to take care of that. So in the chat window, probably you should, there's a to field, and in there you should probably highlight the panelists and attendees. If you do so, everybody should be able to see the message. But I'm getting some responses that people can only send to panelists. So that's interesting. We'll try to figure out if we can fix that for the next session. But we'll make sure to capture all of the input that you shared, all the tips around the product vision that you just shared, and we'll make sure that it gets added to the community. There's also a question again around the recording. The recording will also be published in the community, and we'll share it via LinkedIn afterwards as well. And we'll make sure to add all your feedback, comments, and ideas to that recording page. So it will be in the Xebia community. So that's a bit of the housekeeping in between, but not certainly not unimportant. So let's move into the second tip. And that's actually one that you also shared, or a couple of you shared in the chat. So keep repeating it, keep sharing it, do that very often. And there's a couple of things that we think might help you to actually do this. And the first one is storytelling is a really powerful way of sharing your vision. And what you could actually do is just try to share a story from a customer, for example. Maybe you just recently talked to a customer, learned more about what their tangible problem is that they're facing. Maybe they have some kind of ideas on what they would like to see changed in the product in order to help them better solve those problems. And storytelling, sharing those stories of where your customer is having some pains, maybe in the process, or maybe you're building a product which doesn't exist in the market yet. So try to share those stories from customers. And a simple thing you could maybe do today is share a story from a customer with a team member. Maybe share a story from a customer in, I don't know, the next sprint review. Maybe share a story from a customer in the next meeting when you're talking to stakeholders. Yeah, so share those customer stories, for example. The next one would be when you are going to share your vision, of course, do that often, but always do that in relationship to the product backlog and the roadmap. And I see some questions, PBL. PBL means product backlog. So when you start talking about the product backlog or when you start talking about the roadmap, somewhere in that picture or somewhere on the screen that you'll be sharing by then, make sure to include and actually start with sharing the vision again. So every time you basically talk about what you're going to do with your team, start first with why are we actually going to do that? And the third practical thing is to actually label the product backlog and to explain also how this product backlog relates to the company strategy. And a great way of doing so is to actually, in your product backlog, just add a card as the first item, which includes your product vision. So make the first item in your product backlog, make that just include the product vision.
Absolutely. Great tips. Tip number 3. Adapt your pitch to the audience. And this actually means that you have to design your pitch, right? Often, so we sort of make them up on the fly. And yeah, and it can work, but it might make more sense to actually think about your story up front and have a couple of them like pre-recorded TED Talks in your brain already. In the product summary, I wrote about the 3x3 format, which can be a way to structure your pitch in such a way. But there's a simpler method using Aristotle's pathos, ethos, logos. So ethos, it makes to make sense that the story comes from you. So just being a product owner is not enough. You're an expert in the field, and therefore they need to listen to you. The story needs to be logically constructed, but it needs pathos. It needs some kind of emotion in there. Why this thing is the best solution since sliced bread, and why you're going to solve world problems by bringing this product to life. And you need to be passionate about that. So that's just one way to design your story. I also like the Disney's hero story. You can Google those. Those are excellent formats to build up your story. So think about them up front and design several of them for different audience. Number 2 would be focus on the value that the product is bringing. And I already saw that in the chat window. I can't really find out. Let me check quickly if I could find out who actually mentioned that. But yeah, I really like this. Focus on the problem that we're solving, the value that your product is bringing for the company or the customer or maybe society. So there's different ways of looking at value. Maybe we get more revenue, maybe we cut costs, maybe we make the life of customers easier, and maybe it helps in our NPS score by turning users into fans. So those are all great ways. So make that the centerpiece of your story. And the third one would be, when we're in France, on parle français, we need to speak French, because otherwise they won't understand us. And for product owners, it's the same thing. If you're talking to the business and you're talking about microservices, platforms, Java, it's all cool stuff, but frankly, nobody understands you. So you need to talk about terms, terminology, things that they find valuable. If you're in the financial sector, it will be financial terms. It won't be about the technology. So focus on the language.
Definitely. And I think that's a great tip that Fred says, I hope your French is
Merci,
better than the given, given example.
vous en prie. Merci.
Chris is actually practicing a lot on his French, so I would assume, Fred, that that he's definitely improving that. So let's go to the next tip.
I can curse very well in French.
Can you skip it to the next page, Chris? So I think the French example that Chris just shared about speaking French, I think that kind of resonates with the second part of this one as well. So try to keep your vision short, clear, and inspiring. And one of these elements in there is short or clear and concise. And I think that concise is also about jargon-free. And like Chris said, maybe when talking to the business, you don't want to go deep into technology. I think that's really important for a vision as well. So it's not just about keeping it clear and short, but especially keeping it free from technology in most cases. That's basically just a solution that we're using to build a product. And the vision itself is much more related about what's the problem that we're solving in the market for our customers. Another one is basically, and that's the first image here, is dream big. A lot of product owners and product managers we worked with, they were creating a vision that was maybe 1, 2, or 3 years ahead of now. Typically, it did include some technology aspects as well. But try to dream big. Try to think about what would happen in 10 years from now, or maybe even longer. A big thing about the vision is it's not something you need to achieve on the short term. And actually, maybe it's something you will never achieve at all. The putting a man on the moon, that was kind of ambitious, big, and inspiring a long time ago. And they weren't sure if they were going to make it at all. But it was the big, hairy, audacious goal, basically. That was a big vision. So try to dream big. Try to think a long time from now. And the final tip on this slide is visualize. We started off with pictures at the beginning. Yeah, Wojtek says go big or go home. We started off with images at the beginning of this session, but visualization is a really powerful technique. And if you look at various different frameworks like training from the back of the room, there's this nice little sentence, images trump words. And basically making use of a lot of pictures, maybe creating a mood board or something that would reflect the future state. That's typically much more helpful than just using words or using those nice canvases, including your vision in there. So try to make use of images.
All right. Final tip. Sometimes I said we shouldn't be called product owners. We should be called problem owners because we own the problem of the customer. We are there to solve their problem. So whenever we're talking and sharing our vision, I like to go back and say, but what are our customers experiencing? How painful is it for them? What can they not achieve? And what are the consequences of this fact? We can relate it back to the business. For example, when you already have a product, hey, we have a product which was designed to solve a certain problem. And we can see it's not achieving these results. And because of that, the company is actually having a negative effect. That would be a way of formulating a problem statement around your vision from a customer perspective and how it impacts the company. So talk about what it means to customers. The second tip, if you want to practice this, explain it to a colleague. And focus yourself in explaining the problem and not going back to the solution or how we arrived there, because it's really easy with a colleague to fall back and say, yeah, but it's the cause of this system, or if we only had this platform, or this technology, or this department. Inside the company, it's really, really easy to think in the terms of how we created the problem, but try to think about what it means to the customer itself. And a practical advice for you, if you were to open your product backlog at this very moment, I'll give you a second to open a second browser window. No, I'm not. I'm just kidding. If you were to open your product backlog right now and look at the top 5 items, and you were pointing a thermometer at this, how strongly do your top items of your product backlog relate to your product vision? How much do they further your product vision? How much do they help you on the way to the moon or to Mars? Or is this just housekeeping and stuff that we need to do? Take a good look at the top of your backlog and see if you can put something in there that really propels you forwards toward your mission. Not only will it make it easier in sharing the vision, what we're trying to do here, but it will also help you in your stakeholder management. It will make your sprint reviews much more fun when you start talking about the big goal that we're trying to reach and how we're making little baby steps in that direction. All right.
Yeah, and of course, then don't look at those very small, tiny bugs, because if it happens to be that there's 5 very small bugs at the top of your product backlog, maybe you should kind of look past that one. But try to see the bigger picture in your product backlog, and just give those PBIs, those user stories, a grade. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do they actually contribute to the vision? That's something you can probably do just right after the session.
Yeah.
All right.
Which brings us to a good question.
Yeah, so of course we're curious to see if this was helpful, and maybe you've seen a couple of tips or heard a couple of tips from other product owners around the vision. And what we would like to know from you is which of these things is something that you can actually and hopefully will actually apply today. So what's one small step that you can actually do today? And please share that one via the chat window. Syncing the roadmap with the vision, creating a wiki page, that's cool. Visualize, improving drawing skills, is yeah, that goes along with it. Include the vision during the review, wiki principle, wiki. So the wiki seems kind of popular.
Yeah, roadmaps, visualization.
Add it to the roadmap. Review the product backlog, cool.
Yeah, tying the stories to the vision, that's also a great way of doing it. Set up a Teams/site channel. Yeah, and then share the vision often at that time.
Well, Jasper, we're happy to see you back next week, so feel free to join in again. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, you stole my mouse. Go.
Great stuff. Yeah, because we also captured a couple of follow-up interesting reads for you, or at least we hope they're interesting for you. So there's this article around 10 more tips for product owners on the product vision, a tool for creating your product vision, which is the product vision board, and an article on how to create one, which is not necessarily the wiki page or the visual with images supported one, yet it tends to be very helpful as well. And the best way to actually pitch your product with the 3x3 framework. And that actually helps you to build those stories that we talked about, those stories that you can share about your customers. So hopefully that will help you to even further up your knowledge. Yeah. So I would say
I see some people checking out, but there's still opportunities to ask questions. So if you have other questions, some people have found the Q&A button in Zoom. Feel free to use that. And great to hear from Thomas that he's 200% fulfilled on his explanation and he's completely energized.
Awesome. Aha. Well, that's one of the important pillars, right?
Exactly.
So thank you very much again. We'll be adding the slides and all your feedback from the chat to the Xebia community, and make sure to capture all that information there. If you want to stay around for a couple of more questions, feel free to do so. And of course, you can always engage with us via the Xebia community. So hope to see you again next week, and see you in the community. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely. I'm going over the Q&A at the same time. Session OKRs or product goals. That's going to be interesting. We might actually do one on those. All right, there was a question from Neville asking, thanks for the tips. Will there be an episode on how to define OKRs from the vision? I'm not sure, we haven't really fixed the agenda yet, but it's the idea of setting goals, setting metrics, making them measurable, connecting them back to the product vision is definitely something we could talk about. So we'll add it to the list. Thanks for your input. I have a question from Danny, how to align different views on the product vision. Robin, do you have an idea?
Sorry, I was going through the Q&A, but
in the chat there's another question from Danny, how to align different views on the product vision.
That's a good question. Maybe can we actually give Danny the mic for a moment to just explain a little bit more? So Danny, you should be able to explain if you want to.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, yes.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I'm still rather new in the organization and I'm trying to figure out what the product vision is actually. And I'm getting different input from different people. And yeah, if you have any tips on how to align that, yeah, that would be useful.
Yeah, definitely. So I think again the wiki example is quite a good one. And basically letting everybody add their input to the wiki page, trying to change it every single time. What I've done in the past is mostly just bring those stakeholders together in a session and exchanging those ideas. And maybe when the stakeholders actually talk to each other, explain to each other, we seem to kind of be more on the same page than we tend to think. So maybe the wording they use is different from each other. So main tip would be just bring them together into one session. And what we, for example, also done, I can share a link to a working session or a workshop you could do with them. And it actually goes through a couple of different steps, basically taking a look at what's our current landscape. So what's the context of the organization and the product? What are some trends going on in the market, in technology, in politics, in economy, etc. And basically from the current situation, it takes you to what are the strengths, weaknesses, etc. of the product, and eventually brings you to what are our goals, what is our roadmap, and what is that big inspiring vision. So it's actually a workshop kind of setting, taking you through a couple of different steps. That could be something
it's higher management, huh? They're rather busy.
Yeah, well, it's actually something we did with higher management.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's really a workshop for setting that vision. Yeah.
Okay.
So that could be something interesting to look at. We'll share the link and resources to that workshop format in the community as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions that came in, Chris? Maybe you can take one more.
Particular? No, I don't think I've seen any other.
All right.
All right. So thank you everybody for joining. Oh, new message. Ooh, new message. Thanks for the tips.
Thanks for the tips.
Thanks for being there. Well, since we still have like 30 seconds left, you can raise your right hand all the way up. You too, Robin. I can see everybody. Then go to the left. Yeah, behind your back. And then give yourself a pat on the shoulder. Very well done, everybody. It was great to have you here and see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.